Today's talk is on, is addiction a choice, a disease, or a morality issue? Byron Kerr is from LifeRing Secular Recovery will discuss the work of LifeRing, which is an abstinence-based worldwide network of individuals seeking to live in recovery from addiction to alcohol or to other non-medically indicated drugs. LifeRing offers peer-to-peer support that encourages personal growth and continued learning through personal empowerment. So let's please welcome Byron.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll start out with a little biographical information. I was born 63 years ago in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Grew up partly in North Texas and partly in southern Oklahoma, and mostly from 1963 on in Livermore, California. The youngest son of two elementary school teachers and also music educators. I read music before I read English. I didn't know it wasn't normal. Growing up in Livermore, attended Livermore High School, did very well academically. Started college, and midway through my first year of college, I was arrested and convicted of a felony, what was then a felony drug charge. That charge today is not even an infraction, and I was about 6 months after the conviction, I was able to have the conviction expunged by Governor Ronald Reagan. At any rate, it did at the time change my educational goals. I had intended to go into law, and at the time you were not allowed to go into, to take the bar with a felony conviction. I believe that's also changed, but it did change my direction. I went on and pursued an education in music, which was a fallback for me. Got married, raised three wonderful daughters, and so on. At a certain point, I recognized that I had a severe problem with substances, primarily alcohol. I had moved away from all of the street drugs due to the marriage and the kids and the mortgage and all of that, but began drinking very heavily in my late 50s. Reasons why I can't tell you, but it happened. I, at that time, approached my employer voluntarily and asked for help through the Employee Assistance Program, and they said, great, we'll set you up with counselors and get this taken care of. And I was thrilled, I was relieved. The counselors interviewed me and we talked about the level of usage and whatnot, and they said, well, gee, we think you could do well with just simple outpatient treatment, but due to your work schedule, let's just send you to a residential program and get this over with. And I said, well, that sounds good to me. What's the program? And they showed it to me, and it was a facility in Sonoma County in the hills outside of Sebastopol. The name of the facility was Azure Acres. A. Very, very clever. I objected to the counselors, and I said, gee, isn't there a choice? Isn't there some other program, a more secular-based program? And they said, oh, no, there's nothing else. And I even did some investigation, found a program in Concord that offered choice, and they very specifically refused. They said, no, you must go to this program. So I did. I drove myself 100 miles to the hills and outside of Sebastopol. Beautiful environment, redwoods and ferns and a 100-year-old structure. It was lovely in that sense. However, it was AA and NA all day, every day, for 28 days. I did the 28 days, spin dry, as it's referred to sometimes. I remained sober for maybe 100 days after leaving. Did not get sober and remain sober until maybe a year later. My best friend kicked me in the ass and said, you need to do something, I don't care what. So I did. I made the commitment to myself to get and stay sober. I was aware of Life Ring as a secular support option, but became very active at that point. I had also, at that time, decided to begin a new career and pursue a new educational goal in that regard. Ironically, I moved back to Sonoma County and pursued a culinary education to pursue a new career in that field. Moving up there early in sobriety, I saw as being a challenge because the only support available was 12-step support. So I started a Life Ring meeting. And then I started another and another and another. At this point, I don't recall how many Life Ring meetings I started in Sonoma County. About 4 years ago, I said to the folks in Sonoma County, I'm leaving you. I've fallen in love, and I'm moving away, and you're on your own. And they've done just fine without me. So it's a thriving community up there. I began starting Life Ring meetings in Santa Clara County, and have encountered enormous institutional resistance to choice in Santa Clara County. Sonoma County, I encountered some, but was able to overcome it by establishing dialogue with authorities and the treatment professionals and the treatment world. Santa Clara County has been substantially different, and I'll elaborate some more, but enormous resistance at all levels. At any rate, about Life Ring, let me start back at the choice. Life Ring is we many times, quite often, call ourselves Life Ring Secular Recovery. There's been debate over the name in several regards. We offer support. The recovery is up to the individual. So I kind of don't like the word recovery, but it's there. Secular also causes challenges. The word is misunderstood. It's quite often confused with sectarian, which is the opposite, almost. But we do feel it's important to include that word at times, just to convey the meaning that we are non-religious. We view ourselves as either an alternate or a supplement to 12-step programs. We don't make any demands that an individual in recovery becomes a life ring true believer. If an individual finds some value in 12-step programs, you're still welcome in Life Ring. We don't condemn 12-step programs. If you find value there, that's fine. The question that I'm going to begin to pose today is substance addiction a disease, a choice, or a moral issue? To start, I don't like the question, but it's frequently asked. The treatment world tends to try to use the disease term because that opens up the insurance money door and enables them to tap into a huge amount of funding. I'm not going to dispute the disease concept, but I certainly have questions about it. I don't believe it can be compared to classic diseases such as cancer or diabetes or any of those. Is it a severe behavioral disorder? Absolutely. That doesn't diminish in any way its importance as a problem in society. And likewise, I don't believe addiction is entirely a choice. There are other environmental factors that could lead a person into addiction. I don't believe anyone chooses to be an addict. They choose to use the substance initially, and the addiction follows. A moral issue, certainly it can be argued that addicts engage in immoral acts, and it may be related to their addiction, but is the addiction itself a moral issue? Again, I don't have an answer, but I think it's a valid question. Many of those questions, I recently read a book entitled Addiction, a Philosophical Perspective, written by Candace Shelby. Candace is a professor at the University of Colorado in Denver. She was also a longtime Life Ring participant member. Her perspective is that those questions that I asked in the previous screen are both irrelevant and relevant. Addiction is all three of those things at the same time, and the level at which an individual may be addicted, all three of those are a factor. There is a disease element, there is a choice element, there is a moral element. The disease model typically makes the claim that substance use will actually make physiological changes in a human's brain. Neuropathways develop due to the substance use, and those pathways become somewhat permanent. This is my understanding of the science as it exists. That still begs the question, are humans whose brains are changed in particular ways because of substance use, are they incapable of self-determination? I believe the answer is no. A person can get clean and sober and alter the brain back in a different direction. Elements of Life Ring. The fundamentals of how Life Ring works are simply the social connection. We liken an addict's self to a survival instinct. Every individual has that instinct to survive, and we label that your sober self. The social interaction in the meeting environment is what we believe will strengthen that sober self and enable someone to maintain sobriety. LifeWing's 3S philosophy is we are, number one, sober, number two, secular, and number three, self-directed, self-empowered, or self-help. By sobriety, we mean abstinence from alcohol and other non-medically indicated substances, drugs. By secularity, we mean that your beliefs regarding spirituality remain your private business. We don't care if you have spiritual beliefs. I would personally encourage you to embrace them even. If you don't, that remains your private business. We just simply focus on sobriety. By self-help or self-direction or self-empowerment, we mean that, for example, in the case of someone that does maintain a spiritual belief system, the power to get and remain sober is still the self. There is no external force that's going to make you sober. Our meetings, our most common format for our sobriety meetings is, how was your week? We focus on the immediate past, the current, and the immediate future, as opposed to, we try not to focus on drug-a-logs or drunk-a-logs, war stories from how far down you went. That doesn't help anyone moving forward is kind of our view. We call the facilitator of our meetings a convener, just simply meaning that's the person that brings the meeting together. We welcome conversation throughout the meeting, positive feedback, questions. We avoid specific advice in the sense of you should do this or that. Statements such as, I feel this is what worked for me, are welcome, but specific advice is never welcome. One place that we have found we're a child of the internet, we actually conduct online meetings via a chat mechanism. Many people have found extreme value there because of the anonymity issue. You can remain obviously completely anonymous online. And it seems as though women especially identify with that because they can avoid the, in the 12-step world, there's something frequently called the 13th step, and that involves essentially predators trolling for a partner in a sobriety meeting. So the online environment has proven very important for security reasons as well as anonymity reasons. Our one and only slogan that we use is don't drink or use no matter what. If you've reached a point in your life where you were using substances out of control, just stop. We're not professionals. We're not scientists. Moderating or using in a controlled way obviously hadn't worked for us. So abstinence is the easiest answer. If you're seeking to moderate, we're not going to condemn that, but we will refer you to someone that supports that approach. I mentioned that we advocate abstinence from alcohol and non-medically indicated drugs. Listed on the screen there are several medications that are frequently used in the treatment world. Naltrexone is a urge suppressant, as I understand it. Antabuse is an antigen. It gives the individual an extremely negative reaction to alcohol. Suboxone is an opioid principally used for opioid withdrawal as a replacement therapy. It is almost, well, it is approaching replacing methadone treatment. To my understanding, I'm not intimate with the opioid treatment world, but those are examples of medications that are used in addiction treatment. And surprisingly, they're frequently condemned by the 12-step culture as you shouldn't be taking those. Those are, you're not abstinent. You're not clean if you're taking those drugs to treat your withdrawal or treat your addiction. We completely accept medically assisted withdrawal or treatment. Our meetings are conducted without prayer or advocating religion. I mentioned that people are welcome to maintain their spiritual beliefs and even advocate them for themselves. Where we draw the line is advocating to others. In other words, I have spirituality as part of my recovery, you should too. No. You're welcome to keep your spirituality and embrace it even, but advocating to others is where we kind of draw the line. We encourage people to also seek the support of, in addition to the group members, your family and friends, as opposed to a higher power or God or that sort of thing. My personal experience in the 12-step world was that I constantly felt that my worldview was not respected at all. Included in the big book is the story of a man that was attending AA for years and years, and he proclaimed himself an atheist, and everybody tolerated him, even though he was a grumpy, curmudgeonly-like character. Everybody in the AA meeting tolerated him because he was sober. Well, one day he disappeared, and everybody nodded and winked, and everybody knew, of course, what had happened. He had gone out, as the expression is. And sure enough, a year later or so, he turned up in someone's attic, and he found God and got sober again and lived happily ever after. And those stories are prevalent in that world. And I always found it offensive or disrespectful, at least, to my worldview. Hopefully in Life Ring, the participants respect all worldviews. It is unrelated to sobriety in our view. We avoid being anti-AA as much as I've expressed myself about my personal feelings. If someone else finds value there, I do my very best not to condemn their pathway. We also recommend people investigate SMART Recovery. Is a very fine organization, entirely secular, again, evidence-based, a slightly different approach than the Life Ring approach, but there's a lot of overlap as well. And Women for Sobriety is actually the oldest secular support organization for women in recovery, and they have now started a Men for Sobriety. I believe they have a few meetings in Canada. I'm not aware of any in the U.S. The way we help each other or support each other in recovery is sharing ideas and insights. And again, I go back to the I statements as opposed to you. I experienced this in recovery. This is how I approached that problem, that sort of thing. The empowering the sober self, that is the title of our principal philosophical text. Recovery by Choice is our workbook. It is mostly a book of questions, and the individual has to provide their own answers. There's no correct answer, there's no wrong answer. It's how are you going to approach this challenge in sobriety? And you provide, the individual again provides their own answers. We prescribe, rather than telling an individual you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and here's how you do it and here's what you do, we recommend that an individual compose their own personal recovery plan. We can maybe provide some ideas, diet, exercise, things of that nature, but what goes into an individual's plan is entirely their business. Our meetings, for example, in this facility, we sit in a circle. The meeting facilitator or convener, as we call them, does not sit at the head of a table with a gavel or and has no specific authority. They simply turn the lights on and start the conversation. The most common, again, is how was your week? We ask, did you encounter any successes or challenges last week regarding your sobriety? And do you foresee anything coming up in the next week that may be a challenge, a holiday, a birthday, something that was previously a trigger, and what is your plan for how to work through that, work around that, work over that? Occasionally we will choose a specific topic surrounding sobriety and hold the discussion around that exact topic. And also our workbook, we have some workbook meetings, and those typically will occur in a residential treatment facility. And the reason we do that in a treatment facility is part of their daily routine in a treatment facility is a check-in. How are you doing? How's it going? And that is so similar to our how was your week format that we try to change it up for that audience specifically. We exchange phone numbers and emails, but we do not encourage if you're familiar with the 12-step world, we do not encourage specific sponsors. A sponsor is an individual also in recovery that is your personal guide or mentor in recovery, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it does allow for abuse of power on occasion, and we try to avoid all anything resembling a hierarchy. So we encourage sober friendships, sober relationships, but not a specific mentorship of any kind, to avoid that hierarchical situation. We're entirely donation-driven. We have an office in Oakland that is staffed by currently one individual, about 20 hours a week. We pay him very poorly, and he puts in about 80 hours a week. So it's a volunteer organization entirely. Our conveners, as I've mentioned, are peers in recovery. Not a leader. Again, their primary role is to open the door, turn the lights on, and start the conversation. But they have no authority. They're not experts. They're alcoholics or addicts like everybody else. They may, in some cases, may have some experience, but that's not to be relied on. Our meetings do have our books and literature and meeting schedules. Our conversations within the meeting, again, are about recovery. How did you approach a particular trigger or get through an event that was challenging? You get ideas from others and compose your own plan to get through it. Again, LifeRing offers itself as either an alternative or a supplement to 12-step programs. We do sign off on mandated attendance records. Courts, employers, treatment programs will mandate that people in recovery attend a certain number of meetings. Ironically, all of the attendance sheets that I have seen say very specifically AA or NA. And the person that is supposed to sign off is referred to as the secretary, which is a 12-step term. At any rate, in Santa Clara County, there are currently 3 LifeRing meetings per week. There are also 3 SMART meetings, and I believe there's 1 Women for Sobriety meeting per week. By contrast, with just AA and NA alone, there are well over 1,000 12-step meetings per week just in Santa Clara County. Just in Santa Clara County. So we constantly are up against going back to the situation where an individual is mandated to attend sobriety support meetings. Many times the authority in question will mandate 90 meetings in 90 days. They can't do that in a secular program. So you are essentially forced into what every court in the U.S. that has ever ruled on this has ruled that 12-step programs are inherently religious. So an individual in that situation is automatically coerced, compelled, or mandated into an inherently religious program. I have worked very, very hard for a good portion of a decade at this point to get that changed, and that's one of my life goals at this point, is to allow online meetings to fill in that gap, to be allowed to establish the meetings in government-sponsored facilities. It's a huge challenge. I am almost able to announce that we will be starting LifeRing meetings at Elmwood Correctional Facility in the very near future. It's taken, just to give you an example of how difficult it is, it's taken 4 years. I mentioned our online meetings, and they are critical due to the relatively small number of our face-to-face meetings. It's a similar format to our face-to-face meetings. There are advantages and and disadvantages to online meetings. One of them being the same. You obviously don't have nonverbal communication. That can be both both an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. The secure aspect of it is what appeals to many people. Again, women especially seem to prefer online meetings for this personal security reason. Some of the resistance we've gotten from the courts in that regard has been entirely bogus. And the American Humanist Association has been very, very helpful, especially here in California. They've been helpful in Orange County, especially on a couple of different cases. The Apignani Humanist Legal Center has taken on cases for 2 different individuals in Orange County who are being mandated into 12-step programs and not allowed choice. In addition to the online chat meetings, there are blogs, bulletin boards, and email lists, and in addition. I mentioned our books that we have. Recovery by Choice is a workbook. Again, the individual fills in their own program. How was your week? Explains our convener's role, but it also has an incredible amount of very valuable recovery information. And Empowering Your Sober Self is available on the table back there. It explains really the fundamentals of what LifeRing is and our approach to recovery. All 3 of those books were composed by Martin Nicholas, who likes to call himself the co-founder of LifeRing. Everybody in the organization knows that he was the actual founder. Marty, about 5 years ago, did, I think, the single greatest thing for the organization he could do, and that is he retired. He said, you're on your own, sink or swim. You don't need me, carry on. We still recruit him on occasion to speak at an event or that sort of thing, and he enjoys speaking, so he'll come around. But in terms of organizational issues, internal politics, all of that, he refuses flat out. And I think in spite of an initial 12 months or so of chaos, the organization is in the long term better off for it. He saw that it had the potential to become a cult of personality, and realized that it was important to not do that. Anyway, that's LifeRing in a nutshell. Questions? Oh, thank you.
Okay, remember, I'll bring the microphone around, raise your hands, and I'll try to get people in the order in which they raise their hands. So,
hello, thanks for the talk. In regards to the meetings that will take place at Elmwood Jail, given that the residents there, I assume they don't have access to alcohol, I'm wondering what you think those meetings will look like.
Yeah. Sadly, they actually do have access to alcohol. There's a long and established culture of making your own in a jail, and the recipe is readily available. And drugs are prevalent throughout prisons. It's an ongoing thing. Substance use within the prison is rampant, and it's related to many of the offenses, especially at that level. My expectations there are extremely low. I'll be happy to see 1 or 2 prisoners a week. If I see a dozen or so, that's wonderful, but I don't have that expectation. But I feel it's important that the choice be there. And I feel it's important also that the county government allows that choice. So that's the reason I'm going. And again, regarding choice, I believe that if an individual is allowed a choice, they're automatically invested in their own choice. And the possibility for success is immediately improved. So I hope that answers your question, but I only expect one or two. I know there are currently 3 inmates there that have specifically requested life ring, and it has taken them over a year to help me get to the point of starting there, and it's still not a done deal.
Could you tell us something about the meetings that are held here, and what are you doing to advertise them?
Yeah. The meetings here have been very spotty at best. Attendance has been 1, 2, I think I had half a dozen one week. I'm frequently shut out.
When are they held?
Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. and we go for a maximum of an hour. That's not a hard or fast rule, but I don't recall one going over an hour.
How are you letting people know that
Primarily, right now, our website. I'm going to look into some media ads of a variety of different things, but mostly just our website. I have been in touch with the Superior Court of California for Santa Clara County and asked that they list us. They said, well, you don't have anything going here. I said, well, yes, I do. There's 3 meetings per week. And they begrudgingly said, well, okay, we'll list you, but so far not a single person from the court system has been referred.
Byron, when someone says something and they don't have the mic, they shouldn't be talking when they don't have the mic. But when they do, would you repeat the question?
Sure.
I was wondering about whether you do get anyone referred to life ring by the courts, and if so, who signs the attendance sheet? Has that problem come up, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, well, in Santa Clara County, thus far, the answer is none. Referred by the.
But elsewhere?
Yeah, elsewhere, yes, we do sign off for their attendance, and the courts do recognize it. That's kind of a mixed bag. I'm not sure mandating someone to attend a meeting is good public policy in the first place. But so long as they are mandated, they need to be allowed the choice, and we certainly provide that.
But the convener, I assume, would be the one to sign it off?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The other question I had was whether there's as much anonymity at life ring as there is in AA. I've taken someone there once and made the mistake of referring to them by their full name. And
Yeah.
chastised.
It's the individual's choice. We encourage people to introduce themselves by their first name. If they choose to share their entire name, that's fine. We don't scold anyone. But the level of anonymity is up to the individual. I don't really care. I'm out there. But if an individual does care about that for themselves, they're entitled to every bit of anonymity they're desiring.
Yes, I can sympathize with your problems with the word secular, being universally misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like that's a word you should drop because, nobody understands what it really means. I would suggest religiously neutral as a replacement, and using the phrase evidence-based, which is sort of a medical thing. So the combination of evidence-based, religiously neutral, I think, would be a good replacement for secular. What do you think about that?
I like those approaches also. Using the word religion opens up another can of worms. So I wish we didn't have to address that issue at all, but we do. Evidence-based, that term has also been kind of co-opted by the religious right. They're making all kinds of claims that are anything but evidence-based. So even though I have a clear understanding of what that term should mean, it's been co-opted by the opposite side of evidence. So yes, it can be used, but it's lost some value maybe. Good idea. But our corporate name is LifeRing Incorporated. It does not use the secular word. We use the word secular to attempt to communicate that we are religion neutral. But that word is misunderstood. So.
I just wanted to expand on what Byron talked about a little bit. I've been a member of AA for 25 years, and there's a judge in our men's group who has sent thousands of people to AA, and he will not give them choice. And that's very unfortunate, because I've seen too many people just leave, never to come back, or they're just playing the game. They don't want to be there in the first place. But it's unfortunate there isn't choice, and that's what Byron's up against, a judge right here in Santa Clara who only believes in AA. And choice is something we definitely need in our recovery community.
Thank you. Yeah, and regarding that issue, the law, by way of precedent, is very clear. What judges are doing at the local level is illegal. It's clearly illegal. But the only person that can address the issue is someone that has standing, and by standing, that means you're in the criminal justice system being processed through as an offender of some sort. You're facing sentencing, you're facing parole, you're facing probation. And in that situation, if you're under that duress, are you going to press for your rights? No, it doesn't happen. So and I cannot go to this judge here in Santa Clara County and say, you're breaking the law. I can't do that for a number of reasons. But I have no standing. I cannot sue the organization. It would be unwise from a PR point of view for the organization to sue, even though they're clearly being harmed. So it's a very touchy issue. It's a situation. I hate to use this comparison, but I don't know a better comparison. I mentioned I grew up partly in southern Oklahoma. When I started elementary school in Oklahoma in 1960, I attended school in the white school district. There was the Negro school district on the other side of town. It was clearly illegal because Brown versus Board of Education was in 1954. Integration didn't even begin to take hold in the U.S. schools until the mid-'60s. And it could be questioned whether it's ever been achieved, but this is a similar situation regarding addiction treatment and support now, in the sense that it is clearly illegal for these judges to be ordering people into inherently religious programs, but they ignore the law because they can.
Hi. In terms of evidence-based,
Yes.
because obviously people self-select to come to LifeRing or AA. It's very hard to do the right kind of clinical studies. But has LifeRing been included in any studies that you could refer us to?
There is one ongoing. Right now, it's being conducted by the Alcohol Research Group, which is under the Public Health Institute out of Berkeley. And we have some baseline data and 1 year mark data. I'm somewhat disturbed by it because the preliminary indications are that LifeRing is exceptionally good. And the reason I'm disturbed by that is I don't feel that our methods are necessarily any better. I think that we look better primarily because the individuals that chose LifeRing sought us out. So they were already invested in finding a way, finding somehow to maintain their sobriety, and so the study I think has some inherent flaws. Even though we look really, really good, I'm not encouraged by it.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. This is the biggest problem in looking at addiction recovery and comparing modes of intervention, because people self-select to stay home and speak to Jesus too.
Yeah.
And that works for them, and it works for them, you know. But I'm very interested in us getting the evidence that says that this is equally good. But with regard to social justice issues, is there anything that humanist groups like ours or other humanist groups could do to help you make a broader impact within Santa Clara County or anywhere else?
Actually, I mentioned earlier, the American Humanist Association has been extremely helpful. It's been really the only organization that's been supportive of that issue. And this goes back, I began working with the AHA on this issue 5 years ago in Sonoma County. Bill Burgess was the lead in the Appignani Humanist Legal Center at the time. He wrote to both the court and the county government regarding the issue, and Sonoma County today is not quite a model, but choice is greatly improved there, and especially when it comes to a government-sponsored situation. That was Bill Burgess, and since then I've dealt with Monica Miller, again in the Appignani Humanist Legal Center, regarding situations primarily in Orange County. I've not specifically addressed Santa Clara County, even though that's where I have a lot of personal dealings. It's not something, again, in order to address the court, you have to have standing of some sort. You have to have been injured. You have to have been harmed in some way. And I don't have standing as an individual. So I'd have to find a drunk stumbling out of a courtroom somewhere and say, "Gee, would you like to sue Santa Clara County?" And then call up Monica Miller and say, "Gee, I've got a live one." I don't see how that would work. It has been helpful to just keep the pressure on. Every time I can approach someone in the county behavioral health department, I do, and I remind them carefully and cautiously that, gee, you're liable for this. And their standard defense is, well, we don't do that directly. We have contractors, community contractors, and the implication is that they're not liable because it's the contractor that's not allowing choice. The problem with that is that if it's government money going to that contractor is immediately a government agent. They're representing whatever government funded them. So both parties are liable. the county for not enforcing choice as a policy, and the contractor for not allowing choice. Those are all angles that I'm very experienced with, and I know the ins and outs of the law, but it's a very delicate dance. You can't walk up to City Hall shaking your fists and say, you're breaking the law. But the American Humanist Association, and specifically the Appignani Humanist Legal Center, has been very helpful. And they currently are engaged in at least 3 cases surrounding this issue that I'm aware of.
I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
So then we have at least 3 questions. I want to ask you one question is, first of all, oftentimes programs have trouble trying to define what the goal of their program is. In other words, how do I know I'm sober enough so I can stop coming to the meetings? Mm-hmm. Because in AA, you never stop coming.
Yeah.
That's what makes them grow. So
right.
First question.
I encourage people to leave. I do, and then that may be a shortcoming, but the idea is to get well, and if you're well, do you need that support anymore? We have lifetime members as well. I think it goes back to the individual. When I first got started with LifeRing in Santa Rosa, a longtime LifeRing participant joined in Santa Rosa and helped get the meeting started. And after 6 months or so, she said, "Gee, Byron, I'm sorry, but I've got a life. I've got to move on." And she's a scientist with the EPA. I don't know exactly what her role was with the EPA, but she had a life. She moved on. About a year after that, I was in a bind, or I think surrounding the holidays, needed somebody to fill in. I gave her a call, and I said, "Gee, can you help me out just this one night?" She said, "Yeah, sure." She came in, she helped out with the meeting, and said goodbye again. I didn't see her again for at least another year. She's sober, she's happy, she's fine, and that's the goal. If someone wants to remain active, I remain active. I don't think I need LifeRing support for my own sobriety at this point. I remain active largely because I'm pissed. I wasn't allowed choice in my own recovery, and one of my life goals is to make sure I can allow others choice when they need it.
Arthur Jackson here. The thing you state about maybe having access to Elmwood, to my mind, sort of opens up the questions that, I don't know, Debbie raised, or whoever the point of the legal thing. When I first came to San Jose 50 years ago or so, I was interested in getting involved in Elmwood, but I never was able to get focused in a way to say, okay, we ought to have an opportunity for anybody in there to talk about their values, if they have a humanist perspective, to be able to get that out, and to be motivated and reinforced in thinking in a different domain. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, obviously, persons in prison, the ones you may be meeting with, mm-hmm. at some point probably will get out, and they probably will have a judge tell them where to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that maybe the humanist community could get involved at Elmwood in ways that would give persons who probably need it pretty seriously some options to think about their values and how they can move towards a joyful life rather than the one that they're probably living.
Yeah. It's a huge challenge. It involves fingerprinting, background checks, all of that. And I've gone through I've jumped through every hoop they've held up so far. I just 30 days ago went to Stanford Police, they do fingerprinting for the sheriff's department. Walked in and said, "Hi, please take my prints." I don't have a criminal record, but I have told everyone about my felony from 40-something years ago. I can legally tell you I don't have that. But regarding Elmwood and getting a humanist presence there, a secular presence there, again, I do a meeting Wednesday nights in San Francisco at Laguna Honda Hospital. And when I walk down the hallway to the nurse's station to get the key to the room that I use, I walk by offices of pastors and rabbis and ministers that have their own office in a city-owned facility. I don't have an office there. So the same situation exists at Elmwood. There are religious leaders that have private offices on government-owned property at the correctional facility, and I'm not being allowed in, even though I'm knocking on the door for 4 years. So it's a challenge, and it requires an enormous amount of persistence and
So
tenacity.
Do you think citizen petitions about the situation of the lack of choice would be helpful, and who should they be addressed to?
Possibly. Who should they be addressed to? The local court system is not a local agency. The court in Santa Clara County is the Superior Court of California for Santa Clara County. So if you address it to county government, they're going to say, "Oh, that's a state issue." But if you address it to the court as a state agency, they're going to say, "Well, the policy is written by the county." So good question. I don't know.
It sounds as though the problem is a particular judge who is not...
In this case, yeah, there are, in local jurisdictions, there are what are termed drug courts. And it's a wonderful concept. We want to rehabilitate these folks instead of putting them behind bars. The problem is they're not allowed choice of pathway. It's exclusively 12-step, which is a fine organization, but individuals are not allowed choice.
But that's by the choice of that one particular judge.
Correct.
So certainly if people made it known that they didn't, how many people are now secular? You don't think so?
Judges, I don't know that I'd encourage it.
Okay.
Because judges are
yeah, they're like doctors. They
special
think they're
breed.
above God.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to say that, but
The other thing is you could put something about, there should be something on the bulletin board here about that you're doing this and that it is here on Tuesdays.
yeah, be happy to.
Okay, we have just a minute or so left.
There are some churches, like the Unitarian Universalists, that have a lot of people that come to their services and whatnot. And they would probably, they're of the type of people, as far as we know, that would give you meeting space in their place, that would inform their congregation about you, et cetera, et cetera.
We've actually had an extensive amount of success working with UU part part of the challenge there, the historic one in downtown San Jose, there actually has been a little bit of resistance because there's a longtime member of the congregation that's a. Yeah, thank you. I was. But that's a one-off case, and other congregations are certainly a possibility. We actually, our founding Congress 20 years ago was conducted at a UU retreat in Florida. Our annual conference 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago was at a UU facility. So we have a long history. We have meetings at many UU facilities. Again, we're not anti-religious. The first meeting here in San Jose is at a Lutheran church. It's a box of air for us, or for me. So, but yeah, the UU folks have been very open in most cases. Yeah.
Okay, we're slightly over time. So this will be the last question. Let's keep it short.
Sure.
It'll be short. How about trying to find some legislator, state legislator, that would be willing to introduce a bill into the state legislature saying that this is a right that people should have, choice,
Excellent idea. I've written to politicians at county level, at state level, both in the legislative side and the administrative side. I wrote to Kamala Harris when she was Attorney General. I had no response, but I will continue to pursue that. So.
Okay, well, let's give the speaker a final hand there.
Thank you.